Viharam Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Viharam Jaya Kunja Navabha Jaya Vivarada Jaya Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Priya Vihara Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Priya Vihara Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Jaya Kunya Vihari Madhava Radha Jaya Radha Gidari Radha Gidari Radha Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Bala Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Haribo Haribo Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev Shri Radha Gidari Shri Godhai Jagannath Subhadra Shri Giraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Shri Gurudev Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta Gaur all go to some devotees, all go to some devotees, all go to some devotees, all go to Shri Guru and Guru and Shri Vidai. So once again, welcome to this morning Bhagavatam class. We'll start with the Prabhupada Lila Mitra. Srila Prabhupada Lila Mitra Ki Jai. Sorry, this. Prabhupada and his disciple visited a Ram Tirth Sarovar, the lake where in a bygone age, the great sage Valmiki had his ashram. The terrain surrounding Ram Tirtha Sarovar was dry and rocky, and the vegetation was sparse. As they stopped at the beautiful bathing ghat, its steps leading down into the lake, the devotees were in a jubilant mood, happy to be in a field trip with their transcendental father and teacher. The peaceful lake and the beautiful ghat seemed an ideal setting for being with Prabhupada. The devotees who knew little of Lord Krishna listened intently as Prabhupada began to tell some the past and the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his incarnation as of Lord Ramchandra. During the last days of his earthly pastime, Prabhupada said, Ram banished Sita, his wife and eternal consort. Pregnant and alone, Sita sought shelter at the ashram of Valmiki, where she gave birth to a son, Love. Valmiki created another son for Sita from the straw and named him Kushal. When Sita learned that Ram was sending a challenge horse throughout the world, she instructed her son to catch the horse. In this way, she concluded they would capture their father and bring him before her. Unfortunately, while the boys were away in their mission, they learned that Lord Ramchandra had departed from the world. Grief-stricken, they returned to Valmiki. To mitigate the boys' anguish of separation, Valmiki sang to them Ramayana, the transcendental narrative of Lord Ram's activities. One day, as Sita was out walking, the ground opened before her, and she turned into the earth from which she had appeared. This event, Prabhupada explained, as he stood with the followers of Ram Tirtha Sarovar, had happened no less than 800,000 years ago. For the devotees, it was as if Prabhupada had opened a new door to the spiritual world. So Prabhupada ki jai, so Prabhupada Liram ki jai. Thank you. So we'll do today's verse. Welcome. Today's verse is from Canto 5, Chapter 11, and text is 12. So we can share the text first. Thank you. The chapter is entitled Jad Bharat Instruct King Raghuna. Om Jnanatrividasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksharamitamitai Tasmai Shri Guruvai Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitamina Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sarpadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savabhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisa Gopisa Kanta Radhakanta Namaste Lapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhavinda Vanishwari Shabhanu Sadadevi Pranami Hari Priya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 11, verse 12. The chapter is entitled Jad Bharat Instruct King Raghuna. Verse goes like this. Kshetre yana eta manaso vidhutir jivatsya maya rachitasya nitya avirhita shapi tirohitascha suddho vichaste he avisuddha kartu. Again. Kshetrajnayata manaso vidhutir Yavasya maya jitya nitya avihita vyapi tirohitascha suddha vichaste he avisuddha kartu. Anybody want to recite? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I am just reciting.
Thank you.
Kshetragyayeta manaso vibhutir jivasya maya rachitasya nityaha abhirhita kvapi tirohitascha shuddho vichaste hi abhishuddha kartuh. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Anybody else would like to say?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Go ahead, Mati. Thank you.
Kshetragayeta manusho vibhutir jivasya maya rocitasya nitaha abhirvitaha kvapi tirohitascha shuddho vichaste hi abhishuddhya kartuhu.
Thank you so much, Mati. Anybody else would like to try? Okay, then we'll go to synonyms. Synonyms. Anybody would like to do the synonyms?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I am reading.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kshetragya, the individual soul, etaha, all this, manasha, of the mind, vibhuti, different activities, jivasya, of the living entity, maya rochitasya, created by the external material energy, nittaha, from time immemorial, avirhita, something manifested, kvapi, somewhere, tirohitacha, and not manifested, shuddha, purified, vichaste, sees this, he certainly, or vishuddha, unpurified, kartuhu, of the doer. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anybody would like to do the translation?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Madhu. Go ahead. Thank you.
Prabhuji, may I read the verse first?
Okay. Prabhu, you can go.
Kshetrajayeta manaso vibhuti jivasya maya rachitasya nitya abhiritaha kvapi tirohitascha suddho vichaste hi avishuddha Kartu. Thank you, Prabhuji. Prepared by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It's stated in Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Kshetre gyam chapi mam vidhu vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. There are two kinds of kshetragya or living beings.
Sorry, Hare Krishna Mataji, we haven't read the translation. Okay. Okay,
Oh,
you can read the
okay,
translation.
the translation.
Okay, you can read the translation, please.
Yeah. I read the translation, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The individual soul bereft of Krishna consciousness has many ideas and activities created in the mind by the external energy. They have been existing from time immemorial. Sometimes they are manifest in the awakening state and in the dream state, but during deep sleep, unconsciousness, or trance, they disappear. A person who is liberated in this life, Jivan Mukta, can see all these things vividly. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Anybody would like to read purport? Yes,
Prabhu, I'll read the purport.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
As stated in Bhagavad Gita 13.13, Kshetra Jnanam Chapi Mam Vidhi Sarva Shreteshu Bharata. There are two kinds of Kshetrajna or living beings. One is the living individual living being, and the other is the supreme living being. The ordinary living being knows about his body to some extent, but the supreme Paramatma knows the condition of all bodies. The individual living being is localized, and the supreme Paramatma is all pervading. In this shloka, the word Kshetrajna refers to an ordinary living being, not the supreme living being. This ordinary living being is of two kinds: the Nitya Baddha and Nitya Mukta. One is eternally conditioned and the other is eternally liberated. The eternally liberated living beings are in the Vaikuntha Jagat, the spiritual world, and they never fall into the material world. Those in the material world are conditioned soul Nitya Baddha. The Nitya Baddhas can become liberated by controlling the mind, because the cause of conditioned life is the mind. When the mind is trained and the soul is not under the mind's control, the soul can be liberated. Even in this material world, when it is liberated, one is called Jivan Mukta. A Jivan Mukta knows how he has become conditioned. Therefore, he tries to purify himself and return home back to Godhead. The eternal conditioned soul is eternally conditioned because he is controlled by the mind. The conditioned state and the liberated state are compared to sleeping, unconscious status, and the awakened status. Those who are sleeping and unconscious are eternally conditioned. But those who are awakened understand that they are eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Therefore, even in the material world, they engage in Krishna's service. As confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami, Iya Yasya Harer Dasya. If one takes to Krishna's service, he is liberated. Even though he appears to be a conditioned soul within the material world, Jiva Mukta Sa Uchayate. In any condition, one is to be considered liberated if his only business is to serve Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Yeah, good verse. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Samadhi Tamil Krishna Goswami Tinami. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Samadhi Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Chani Visheshya Shanivadi Prasyata Adhistani. Shamatam Shakatha Krishna Punya Shamanam Kirtana Hide Ananta Si Abhrani Vido Hiti Swit Sudam. Nasta Prayastu Bhadrashu Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Sloke Bhakti Hitaki. So welcome again everybody to this morning's Bhagavatam class. We've been hearing this chapter 11, Jad Bharat instruct King Raghunatha for quite last few days. And the main focus here is on the control of the mind. Right from the beginning of this chapter, King Raghunatha is being instructed very nicely by Jad Bharat Maharaj. and how the mind should be controlled. So a bit of a recap. Let me see, just to put the text in the right context. Nice to recap, although so many previous speakers has already done so, but just for my purification, I'll do this myself. So thank you for giving this opportunity to do this verse today. And I'm just doing this as a service and for my purification. So anybody who is some, so yeah, I need your blessing, and anybody has some question or reflection, very happy to share. Thank you. So let's recap today. So we had Jat Bharat here speaking to King Raghuna, and Jat Bharat already had two previous lives we described in the previous chapters as Bharat Maharaj as a king, and then as Dear Bharat. We also saw that. And then he goes to ashram to do devotional service and get attached to the deer. And then his journey starts as a deer. And then because he's continuously remembers the Lord, he got the opportunity to remember his previous life, and he's remorseful. And then end of this deer life, he gets the body of Jat Bharat. So Jat Bharat, after escaping from the decoys who wanted to offer him as a man animal to Kali, he was running around, and this is where we see the meeting of Jat Bharat with King Raghuna. Raghuna was already on his journey to one of the holy places, and he was being carried by the palanquin bearers. So once one of the palanquin bearers became sick, and then they engaged Jat Bharat as the fourth palanquin bearer. And Jat Bharat, because he was quite compassionate, while he was carrying the king, he was not carrying him evenly, because he was looking out for ants that might be on the path, and he was zigzagging, which annoyed the king. The king, Raghuna, became quite annoyed and sarcastically chastised Jat Bharat. Jat Bharat, because he was very elevated, he did not mind this. Then Jat Bharat says something to the king that this body, the soul, is neither fat nor thin, or young or old. And because of this transcendental knowledge, the king, Jat Bharat, became quite amazed at the death of one of his pelican carriers. And then he realized this is one of the very highly realized sadhu in the ways of like a madman. Then he got down his pelican, and he surrendered himself and asked for forgiveness. I mean, this was such a big transformation. And then here we can see, at the beginning of this chapter, Jat Bharat Maharaj started instructing King Raghuna of the intricacies of devotional life. In this chapter 11 is very similar to chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, Dhyana Yoga, because mostly it deals with mind control. Right from the beginning, it says the mind is the center of these five senses, and it's very important to control it in order to make spiritual progress. Yesterday we heard Sri Krishna Prabhu, and one of the main points was that the five elements, the five working senses and the other senses, and the mind are 11, and of course the 12 is the false ego, constituting 12. They are not independent, or they do not work independently, but under the control of the Supreme Person of Godhead, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. And then Prabhu explained very nicely that the interconnection between the five working senses and five knowledge-acquiring senses, and the 11, and the causes of the various functions, 5 of them, and the interaction. There's millions, hundreds and millions of combination permutations, which carries the Jivatma to his next destination. And each Jivatma, because these combinations are different and they have a different inclination, different unique, it creates different impressions and then had different outlook on the life. So today's verse we see here, the verse 2. Sorry, the translation check. The individual soul bereft of Krishna consciousness has many ideas and activities created in the mind by the external energy. They have been existing from time immemorial. Sometimes they are manifest in the awakening state and in the dream state, but during the deep sleep, unconsciousness or trance, they disappear. A person who is liberated in this life, Jivan Mukta, can see all these things vividly. So there are like 5 parts to this verse. One is that individual soul who is not Krishna conscious have many ideas and they have many ideas created from previous life and this life. And also, Prabhupada said in the verse, from time immemorial, because we have many lifetimes. The previous life, all the impressions are created and it is resting in the mind. Then the second idea is these ideas are manifested in the awakening state or in the dream state. The third idea is, the third part of this verse is during deep sleep or trance, they disappear. Or when somebody is fully awakened, Krishna conscious, these ideas, which are ephemeral, they disappear. And then the fourth idea is that, the fourth part of the verse is this: the person who is liberated in this life, Jivan Mukta, can see all these things vividly. So somebody can still be in this material world and still be fully Krishna conscious. It's called Jivan Mukta. We'll discuss this more in detail. So this chapter, right from the beginning, as I mentioned, we can see Jat Bharat is being instructed, Judge Bharat is instructing King Ravana in the control of the mind. And we see if you look at the verses from here, verse 4, it says, as long as the mind of the living entity is contaminated by the 3 modes of material nature, goodness, passion, ignorance, his mind is exactly like an independent, uncontrolled elephant. It simply expands its jurisdiction of pious and impious activities by using the senses. The result is that the living entity remains in the material world to enjoy and suffer pleasures and pain due to the material activity. So the mind, as long as it's controlled by the 3 modes of material nature, is in a very precarious position, and the mind can take him up, a person, the living entity, up or down. So all this way, King Ravana is really trying to impress, Jat Bharat is really trying to impress King Ravana that one has to be very diligent in controlling the mind. So let's discuss a bit about what the mind is. There's an analogy in Katha Upanishad, and also, and Prabhupada also mentioned this. Let me share the screen to explain how the mind is related to the senses. Okay, you can see these small directions. We have the chariot in the Katha Upanishad, and also Srila Prabhupada explained in the 6th purport to the verse 6.34. The individual soul is the passenger. You can see the individual soul is here, and in the cart of material body. So the material body is compared to the cart. And the intelligence is the driver. The mind is the driving instrument, the lagam, the driving instrument is it's the mind. And the senses are the horses. The self is thus is the enjoyer and sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So the intelligence is the driver, and this living entity, the jiva, is sitting in the body on the chariot, and the horses are the senses. And because the intelligence is not very strong, the mind becomes the center. And if because the mind, the senses around centered around the senses are centered around the mind if not controlled, then the horses will take them anywhere. The soul, the jivatma can be wrecked. He can. So it's very, very good comparison, because the mind is not controlled, and then the senses are not controlled, and the destination of the chariot where he wants to go will not be reached. Actually, the body, or as compared here, the vehicle, the cart, can be get in a ditch and be disintegrated. So to control the mind, the senses has to be controlled. The mind is the center. I was reading Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's broadcast, and it says, and the mind is the interface between the body and the soul. So that's why here it says the mind has to be controlled very diligently, otherwise whole the spiritual journey is spoiled. We see this in Bhagavad Gita very, very vividly. In Bhagavad Gita, right from in the 6th chapter, Krishna is instructing Arjuna Maharaj. From verse 4, verse 5. He said, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So mind the way we use the mind can be a friend or an enemy. Then say, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friend, but one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Verse 7. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So everything is centered around the mind. So mind can be a friend or enemy. And one who has controlled the mind, he says the super soul, Krishna is in tranquility, the super soul is already reached. So we know from other verses in the 6th chapter that Arjuna Maharaj is saying that to control the mind is so chanchalam, very difficult to control the mind. One second. In verse 34, Arjuna Maharaj says he has his reservation over how you can control the mind. Chanchalam himala Krishna parmathi balavad dhritam dashyam nikatam manya vayur ivasu duskaram. For the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the mind. I think the previous speakers have already dwelled on this, but I'm just mentioning as passing that Krishna, Arjuna Maharaj has already, he's such a powerful warrior and very advanced devotee. He is saying that the mind is very obstinate. He said restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. 4 adjective is using to designate the mind. And he says, comparing the mind, mind is more difficult to control than the wind. Then Krishna gives the instruction on how to control the mind. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Samanisa Mahabaho Mano Turikitam Chalam Abhyasana tu Kwantiya Virya Jnana Chagrahiti. Translation. Lord Krishna said, O mighty arm, son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it's possible by suitable practice and detachment. So Lord Krishna also agrees, the mind is very difficult to control. It's very difficult to curb the restless mind. But there are two parameters, two things that we can control the mind, by abhyasa, practice, and by vairagya, detachment. These two instruction of Lord Krishna is very, very important. By abhyasa, by practice, and by detachment. Prabhupada says vairagya means detachment from matter and engage of the mind in spirit. So once we try to get disengaged from the matter and engage your mind in Krishna, this slowly the detachment will come, and then the mind become the mind can be more controlled. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind is as expressed by Arjuna, accepted by the personal Godhead, but at the same time is suggested by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the super soul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc., etc. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotion service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such devotion engagement is sharing about Krishna. This is very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgiving. So Srila Prabhupada says, just by becoming Krishna conscious or even with practice bhakti, one can gradually take control of the mind. So abhyasa and that is practice, and vairagya by detachment. These are the two important ideas to control the mind. So I'll stop sharing the screen. Okay. So this is about the controlling the mind, because this chapter is very, very, very much focused on trying to get King Raghuna to be more controlled, because he was always seeking transcendental knowledge. And here the first instruction given by Jad Bharat is to control the mind. Then in the verse it says that there is impression carried by the individual mind from time immemorial. It comes in the waking stage and also in the dream. And in the unconscious state, in the trance state, these impressions are not there. So where all these impressions are coming from? Because living it has many, many past lives, hundreds and thousands, we don't know where it come from. Because it's a nidya baddha, from time immemorial, we cannot trace when the living entity came to being and what impressions carried. But all this combination impression from this life and previous lives are impacting the mind, impacting the Jivatma's mind, how he's seeing the whole world. And because these impressions are coming through the 5 senses, working senses, and the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, and the mind is been accumulating in the mind for many, many lifetimes. This is a Gunava Shastra, but recent research also validates this this function, that the mind has many, many impressions. This Dr. Stevenson, he did a lot of research on reincarnation. And one of the common factors of the person who leaves the body, it's called the near-death experience, NDE. And ND, in the ND, the person who leaves the body suddenly, he goes, according to the a lot of interviews and research, they said the common factor is that the soul leaves the body, is hovering above the body, it doesn't want to leave, but when it leaves through a dark tunnel and comes to a bright light, and all his previous experience, his previous life impression, passes through his eyes like a cinema, like a movie. What he has done, good things, what is bad things, all these impressions within the mind is flashed through him, through his eyes. You can see all this. So we can see that impression created by the previous experience are already accumulated in the mind, and that once the soul leaves the body, is carried to the next body through the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, false ego, and it carries on and it creates more and more impression. So then Prabhupada mentioned here the Nitya Baddha and Nitya Mukta. Nitya Baddha is always bound. It's the mind is the one that binds the Jivatma to the material world, material birth, material concepts of birth and death. So Nitya means eternal, and Baddha means bound. So one might say, how is it the living it is Nitya Baddha, always bound? What is if it's eternally bound, how can he get out this cycle of birth and death from material engagement? But Prabhupada mentioned that the Nitya Baddha means from time immemorial. We do not have a history when he started. So it's very, very long, like eternity. But there's a relief for Nitya Baddha souls. They can also be elevated to the Mukta stage by the Vedi Sadhana Bhakti. It says Prabhupada given the Vedi Sadhana Bhakti, how we can do our daily sadhana, and that frees the mind from this material conception and create positive impressions, and that can elevate or free the mind from material bondage. So Prabhupada has given this very nice procedure, right from Mangalati, attending chanting, deity worship, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, all in the evening of the bathing, deity worship, reading Bhagavad Gita. This whole process is given. But the mind, if it doesn't want to obey the higher authorities, then the mind will not achieve the goal of being entangled from the material life. So this duty, this obedience comes from duty, before the duty, and then before the duty of Vedi Sadhana Bhakti. And by that, devotee becomes eligible for the mercy of the Lord in the pure devotees. And from there, the bhakti starts, and then once one can attain the supreme goal of going back to Godhead in the to the dham of Radha and Krishna, and engage in the eternal service. So initially, there has to be some discipline. One cannot be in a comfort zone and have a short-term goal. The mind is running all over the place, and we can do the Netflix or go through a phone and watch all the reels because that feels comfortable. But it's a short-term goal. This is one which binds the mind to the material world. So if there's a high authority and there's guidance there, like Srila Prabhupada, and the living entity follows this guidance and give up this short-term pleasure potency for long-term higher goals, then one can slowly, gradually be freed from under anarthas and come to the destination of pure devotional service. And of course, the ninth process stage of bhakti through the Brahma Bhakti towards the last. So we see that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, mind is the one who has conquered the mind. The mind is the best friend, but for the one who failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. So, so one is to master the mind. He says, first, uh, first is to master the mind. Otherwise, the mind becomes the worst of the enemy, and or it can become best of the friends. We can compare it to the fire. Fire, when it's controlled and is best of the friend, we can use the fire for so many functions like heating, cooking, etc. But when the fire becomes the master, then it can control, it become uncontrolled, and then it can burn the house and become wreak havoc in our material life. So fire is, when it's a servant, it's a very nice friend, very helpful, very positive. But once it's become master, then it can wreak havoc. Similarly, the mind, when it's controlled as a servant and serving the Supreme Lord in devotional service, then it is a friend. But once it become like a master and overrides the senses, the intelligence, the false ego, then the living entity become more and more integral, more bound in the material life. In the verses where we have very good function, where verse where the devotee, by controlling his senses, utilizing Krishna service, he become unbound. I'll just share this verse one second. This is a famous verse from 9 Canto, chapter 4, verses 18 to 9. Saive mana Krishna Padaravindio, Vamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvantam. I'll just read the translation. This is Amrish Maharaj. Maharaj Amrish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna temple, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sorry, anybody can see these the verse? Oh, sorry, I didn't see it properly. Anyway, I'll read the verse, then I'll see it. Okay. He engaged his senses of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord, and he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord. His head in bowing before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Amrish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment to the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. So it's a very strong verse. One second, I can share this. So this is the verse. Sin, Maharaj Amrish. So everywhere we see in Bhakti and devotional side, the mind has been always been focused for advancing in spiritual life. Here Maharaj Amrish is instructing us that one's mind should always be meditating on the Lord's feet of Krishna. And the tongue should be describing his glories. All the senses to be engaged in Krishna's service, and that can free up free the senses from material life and get attached to the Lord. That will free us from the bondage of material life. So very, very instructive verse. All the time we see in Bhagavatam and also in Bhagavad Gita, the mind has to be engaged in the service of Lord. Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yayi namaskar. The first verse, the last verse of chapter 9, it says man mana bhava, always engage the mind in thinking of remembering Krishna. So this is the way of getting out of the cycle of birth and that become detached from material life. So in the next few minutes, I want to speak about what affects the mind why the mind become uncontrolled. We always seen the mind because the senses are uncontrolled. The senses drive the mind to do something which is not very conducive for spiritual life. So one of the things that really affect the mind is the diet. What we eat impacts the mind. If somebody is eating something which is not offered, immediately the karma of the food impacts the mind. The mind becomes restless. Depends on the what is in the food. We have seen previous, I think, in one of the verses or one katha where I mentioned that there was a great sadhu and they were living very nicely doing the bhajan. One day they got a donation of some flour and they made chapati. And when they ate the chapati, their mind became disturbed because then they found that flour was coming from a prostitute. And because the impression of the contact with the uncontrolled mind is also impacting the person who's prepared it and also the person who ate it. So the way we, that's why in our bhakti tradition, we have to be very strict how we obtain the ingredients, who cooks it, how it's offered, and how it's on it. So otherwise, Krishna says all the sinful activities are in the grains. So one should be very careful what we eat and how we eat, who is cooked it. These are some of the very important information for controlling the mind. The next is the environment. Where there is not very conducive environment, the impression of the environment can also affect the mind. Few years back, I went to Vrindavan with one of my friends, and he a young boy, about 18 years old, a very uncontrolled person. His mother said, just take this, my son, maybe he'll learn something from pilgrimage. And when we went to Vrindavan, he was a completely different person. He was chanting all the time, sometimes 100 rounds, sometimes 108 rounds. He only used to chant 1 or 2 rounds before. And just the impact of Vrindavan is so great that completely transformed me. Whole day was chanting. I'll go to bed like 9 o'clock. He'll say, oh, I went to bed 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I was chanting. Whatever we told the place, he's always chanting. And then next day I asked him, how many rounds did you chant? Oh, today I did 110 or 108. All the time he was chanting. What impressed me is that the holy place has such impact on the person psyche that he was completely transformed, just the impact of the place. So our environment also impact. So similarly, somebody who goes to a pub or a dark place can have a negative effect. So it's both, we have to choose where we stay and what is the environment. The third place is our association. We have already discussed association is very important. If somebody associates with the sadhus, who are spiritually advanced, they can also have very positive effect on your bhakti. But somebody who associates with the negative people, who are drunkards or who are not following this regulative principle, can impact a person negatively. So then also what we read, what we hear, these are all very important factors. Now in the current age, we see the media has so much impact. Person are on the screen maybe 7, 8 hours. They found that India, youth in India has one of the highest screen time. I think something like 7 hours or something. So somebody spends so much time on the media, looking at Netflix or whatever, different is going to impact their mind. So this is very, of course, the media has also positive effect if somebody uses it properly, and like we are using media. So once media is like, again, like fire, a good friend or a worst enemy, depends how you use it. It's not that all is negative. So Rupa Goswami said we should use everything in the service of Krishna, then become positive. But if somebody uses the media, same phone or TV or other media to look at some unsavory sites, and that's going to impact on the mind. The fifth is the way we live, the sleeping pattern. In the sleeping state, the mind, the body rests, and it rejuvenates our tired body. Whatever impression we have created in the daytime get consolidated, and the memory becomes very nice. If somebody sleeps less, or the sleeping pattern is very, very uneven, they might be getting up like 11 o'clock in the morning, they might be going to bed at 2 a.m. in the morning. All these things, the sleeping pattern also impact very, very severely on the mind. Depends. So as Srila Prabhupada said, we know we chant early in the morning, the Brahma Muhurta, the effect of the mind is much better, and we can chant much better. But somebody who stays late and gets up late, the half the day is lost, and their mind is completely uncontrolled. He says somebody who wakes up after the sunrise, the sun not curses, but the sun impacts their mind, their intelligence starts losing. They become more and more sinful. So the time and the sleeping pattern is very, very important. In this verse, we saw the 3 stages of sleeping: the awakening state, the deep sleep, and the trance state. In the awakening state, the mind is collecting a lot of impression. I think one of the previous speakers said there's something like 10,000 impressions per minute or something. The mind is accumulating all these impressions going on. And in the deep sleep, the mind is consolidating. Not only the body is being repaired, but the mind is collecting and getting the impression sorted out. So in the deep trance state, here we say in the Jivan Mukta state, the mind is completely not aware of the material activities. So here in the last verse, Prabhupada said, a person can be a Jivan Mukta even in this lifetime. He's living the material world, but he's not touched by the material energy. Just like the lotus flower growing in a pond. It might be in a dirty place, but the leaves of the lotus flower the water doesn't wet them. If a drop of water touches the leaf, it just slides down. So the lotus flower is in a wet place. It's not being made wet or being affected by the water. Similarly, a pure devotee who is in the material world, but is 24/7 engaged in the service of the Lord, he is already in a Jivan Mukta stage. He's not impacted. There is a verse in Nectar of Devotion. Let me see if I can get this verse. It says that one who is completely 24/7 engaged in the service of the Lord. I just studied this from Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion, right? Iha yasa hare dasya karmana manasa gira nikhileswa api ahvatasu jivan mukta sa uchyate. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna with his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person even within this material world. Although he may be engaged in many so-called material activities, because of constantly engaged in devotional service in any condition of life, a devotee is free from all material bondage. So devotee who is 100% engaged, his body, mind, intelligence, and word is considered is Jivan Mukta. Is already, although he's in the material world, is already liberated. Is in the liberated stage. We can see Srila Prabhupada is always engaged in the service. The previous, I think, speaker we had, Prabhupada Lila Mitra. Prabhupada had so many engagement, and I think 8 engagement a day, and the devotees were feeling very tired. And when they came back, they just wanted to crash, and they were saying, how Srila Prabhupada can continue? So later on, they saw that Prabhupada was already translating in his room, even after doing like 8 engagement a day. So because he's already given all his word, his mind, intelligence, his body, intelligence, words in the service of Krishna, is already liberated. Although in what is said to be like in the material world, he's maybe writing on a paper, looks like a material activity, but that's a transcendental activity. So a devotee who has given given his body, his mind, intelligent words in service of Krishna, is already liberated even in this material world. He's not affected by the material energy. We can see in Srila Prabhupada's case, even his last days in his material world until Lila, he was quite conscious. He was dictating the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam. Even he was just materially, he was just skin and bone. In that state, the Ayurvedic doctor says it's a very painful state. No one can tolerate at this stage. But Srila Prabhupada was quite conscious. Even at stage, last minute, he just whispering dictating the translation of the verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. That's called Jivan Mukta. So here in this verse it says, then the Jivan Mukta, he can see all this vividly because he has experienced this. Prabhupada says in the purport, therefore, even in this material world, they engage in Krishna service, as confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Here, yes, Hare Dasya. This is the one. If one takes to Krishna service, he is liberated, even though he appears to be conditional soul within the material world. Jivan Mukta Savishite. In any condition, one is to be considered liberated if his only business is to serve Krishna. So in the translation of this verse, when Prabhupada mentions that a person who is liberated in this life, Jivan Mukta, can see all these things vividly because he is already liberated. He is seeing all this from a completely different angle from the normal people. Like somebody has an overview of what's going on, and he knows what is what, and because he's already liberated, all these material things are not impacting his consciousness. So he's Jivan Mukta. Even in this life, he is already liberated. So these are some of the takeaways from today's verse. I just sum up shortly. 1 second. Oh, we are already 8:30. Okay, so in this verse and the previous verse, one of the takeaways is that, and as always, the mind is a chief or the center of the senses, and has to be engaged in Krishna service, and that way Jivatma can be liberated. The reverse is that if the mind is not controlled in engaged in the service of Krishna, and it will be like a bondage. A person can be liberated in this life, Jivan Mukta, if they engage all their senses, their mind, their intelligence, and their words in the service of Krishna. So a person can be in the material world, but can still be liberated. Third takeaway is that the mind is can be a best of the friend or worst of the enemies, depending how we use the mind in, whether we use the mind in Krishna service or we use the mind in material service, then mind can be in liberated state or in a bondage state. There are different factors affecting the mind, as I mentioned. One of the diet, the environment, sleeping pattern, the association. These are some of the factors that affect the mind. So Krishna says, by practice, abhyasa, and by viraga, by detachment, if the mind is doing these two things, abhyasa, by always practicing devotional service, and vairagya, by detaching from material activity, the mind can be elevating, can be elevating in spiritual life. Otherwise, it can be bondage. And we show the case of Amrish Maharaj, how he was using all his senses and his mind in serving Krishna. So this 11th chapter of the 5th canto is very, very detailed about the importance of mind control. Very, very important, because mind is the center of the senses and can either elevate a person or degrade a person. So I'll conclude here. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any reflection or queries or question, if I can answer it, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Bhaktam, Gaur Bhaktam, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Prabhu.
Thank you very much for the very nice class, explaining the verse so nicely from different angles. And as you have told, and as you mentioned the verse, there are two types of people, Jivan Mukta and Nityavadha or Nityavadha. Jivan Mukta are those who are generally on the spiritual platform, on the Vaikuntha Loka. They are Jivan Mukta. They are free from three modes of material nature. But those who in this material world, we are all affected by the three modes of material nature, and we are Nityavadha. We are called Nityavadha. That means we are stuck in this material world because we do not know our own Swarupa or the own position in relation to the Lord. And we accept that in this material world that we can become master of our own things, independent of Krishna, and that's why we remain stuck here. But the moment one understands that knowledge is acquired, that by serving the Lord we can become free from this material world, then that is the real knowledge. And that comes when we consider the body. I am not this body. My Swarup is always the spiritual and not this material. And to do that, and after that, we try to serve the Lord, and that is the purpose of this human life. When we understand this, and the greatest obstacle in understanding this is our mind, because of the Maya or the illusory potency of the Lord, we think that we are the body, and so mind always attracts with material things. But to get free from the mind, from these material things, the only and the devotees always do, as our acharyas have told, is to take the mind for the service of the Lord. It is not possible to to keep the mind idle, as we have told, in sleep. When we are asleep, even at that time, the different senses remain stagnant, but the mind is still active. When it is not deep sleep, it doesn't go to deep sleep. In a sleeping condition also, normal sleeping condition, the reflection of what he has done is in the daytime that comes in their mind. That means control the mind is by forcefully is very difficult. What we have to do, we have to engage for the service of the Lord, as Ambarish Maharaj has done it. Shaboimon Krishna Padara Vindayor Pachangshi Gunanuvarnane. That means he has engaged his mind for the service of the Lord. And in this way, if we engage our mind for the service of the Lord, then automatically we will get detached from the material things. And that is the beauty of the devotional service. It simultaneously happens. When one engages in devotional service, his detachment from material thing automatically happens. And there is a verse also in shows, if I can remember, let me try to quote it. Bhakti Poreshanubhav Birokti Rannatra Choishotri Koeko Kaloho Prapoddamanoscha Shu Jatashnoto Tushti Pushti Shudapayo Nugasam. Just as we take each morsel of food on our mouth, at the same time we can understand it gives us tushti, it gives us happiness, at the same time it gives us energy, and also it removes the hunger. So three happens similarly, happens in a similar way when we do devotional service. It gives us a happiness and detaches us from material things. That happens simultaneously. So that is the beauty of devotional service. We engage our mind for the service of the Lord and do not try for the yogis by controlling in an artificial way. And that is the best path as suggested by our acharyas, and we follow that. And that is the way to become free from this material world. And when one has achieved that state, he is called Jivan Mukta. Even he is in this material world, he is free from attachment to the material things. ইহ যশ শহরের দাসী কর্মনা মনসাগিরা নিখিলা অবস্থাতু জীবন মুক্ত উচ্যতে. As Rupa Goswami has mentioned it in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So with that, I'm concluding. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, thank you for the very nice class. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhu, for your summarizing the whole class, more or less, the main points. Anybody else before we close? Okay, there doesn't seem to be. So we close the class here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Vancha kalpatarubhescha.
कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो
Vaishnavebhyo namo
नमो
namo
नमः
Ananta Koti
वैष्णववृंद की जय
Jai.
ग्रेस नंदव्रज प्रभु
Nanda
की
Vraja Prabhu ki jai.
जय
Srila Prabhupada ki
जय